If you are visiting your chiropractor today because you have a symptom, such as pain, it is important to understand that troublesome symptoms don't appear out of thin air. They build up over time, like the analogy of straws on a camel's back. Hundreds of straws are stacked up over time, yet with the addition of the 1,000th tiny straw, the camel's back suddenly breaks. It's the same with symptoms. The problem can build up unnoticed over time. Then suddenly symptoms make themselves known in a big way. A symptom may only be the tip of the iceberg, with a much bigger problem lying under the surface. After all, a symptom is just a symptom. It's not the cause. Symptoms are a bit like the fire alarm going off to warn you that there is a problem. The fire alarm is not the problem, the fire is. So don't turn off the alarm and ignore the problem. Go find the cause and put out the fire. For a chiropractor to help you, it may take a number of visits. If your problem took time to build up to the level that it is today, more often than not, it will take time to resolve it too. It's also important to understand the symptoms may be due to dysfunction in a part of the spine that seems unrelated to the problem area. Here's an example. It may be that you have pain in your left knee. It's hard to imagine that this pain could have anything to do with your spine. But if your spine is not moving properly, it may be interrupting the flow of information from your leg to your brain and back again. And because of this, your leg may be receiving faulty messages from your brain, which means that your knee moves in a less than ideal way. And poor movement sustained over time can often create an imbalance in your body that may cause pain. Remember that your body is one big interconnected system. No part of it operates in isolation. The objective of chiropractic care is to restore healthy communication throughout your body and to maintain this communication over time, leading to better function, less accidents, and a healthier you. Did you know there is a stack of scientific research that has demonstrated chiropractic care can positively affect many different aspects of health and function? Let's explore some of this research. First up, let's take a look at a study involving muscle function for stabilizing the body, in which young healthy students were the research subjects. To set the scene, you need to know that the muscles deep in the abdomen are part of your core stabilizing system, and they need to be turned on before you lift your arm, so that you remain stable and don't injure yourself. This should happen very fast and without your conscious awareness. This is called feed-forward activation because it's pre-planned by the central nervous system. It ensures that movement of the body is balanced so that no injury takes place. The researchers found that in a group of 90 healthy students, 17 of them could not pre-activate their abdominal muscles before they moved their arms. This meant they were more prone to injury. 6 months later, the researchers tested 13 of the affected students again and found that they still couldn't do it. So what was going on with these students? To find out, they were given chiropractic assessments, and it was discovered that they all had tightness and restriction of joints in their pelvis. They were subluxated. So these 13 students received chiropractic adjustments of their pelvis. And guess what? There was an almost 40% improvement in their ability to pre-activate their core abdominal muscles. That's pretty phenomenal. This study is really important because it has big implications. These students had no existing pain at all, but scientists think that poor control of the core muscles may be the cause of people developing pain or sustaining an injury in the future. We know from other research studies that people who have low back pain often have delayed activation of their core abdominal muscles when performing various movements. We also know that the brains of many of these people with low back pain are much less aware of what is going on in their lower backs. This means that many people with low back pain, their brains are not receiving or processing accurate information from the small muscles close to their spine, so their brains have to guess what's going on and therefore may not be controlling the lower back in an ideal way, which can damage the back further. This is why chiropractic care is so important. It can restore proper communication between your brain and your body, so your brain knows accurately what's going on and can control your whole body in the best way possible. Did you know that many research studies have shown that chiropractic care can change brain function? Let's look at one of these studies. This one explored the brain's ability to sense the position of the elbow when the arm is moved. The study involved 25 people with low level of neck pain and 18 healthy people with no pain at all. The healthy group was the control group. All of the participants were tested for their brain's ability to determine the exact position of their elbow joint. They were shown how to position their arm while lying down and then were asked to reproduce this angle with their eyes closed. A fancy tool called an electrogoniometer was used to ensure that the findings were very accurate. The healthy control group was very good at knowing exactly where their elbow was positioned and could consistently reproduce the elbow position. But the group that suffered with low-level neck pain were not so good at knowing where their arms were. The group with low-level neck pain was then given chiropractic adjustments. After this, they were better at repositioning their arm. Their brains were better able to see where their arm was after they were adjusted by the chiropractor. This study was really cool because it shows that improving the function of your spine can not only help your brain see what's going on in your spine, but it can also help improve the way your brain sees what's going on in your arms. There are many, many more research studies like this that demonstrate all sorts of benefits from receiving chiropractic care, such as improved visual acuity and visual field size, reaction times, brain processing times, joint position sense in your ankle, spinal function, muscle strength in your legs, and prevention of muscle fatigue. We'll explore more of this research in future videos. In the meantime, make sure you get yourself checked by your chiropractor. Do you work out at the gym, pumping iron to get stronger? If you do, you may be fascinated to know about this recent study conducted in New Zealand, because the way your spine works actually influences how strong you are. In 2014, a group of researchers at the Centre for Chiropractic Research in Auckland, New Zealand, studied the effects of chiropractic care on a group of students. They measured how strong some of the lower leg muscles were in these students, and they also tested how strong the contraction messages from their brains were to their leg muscles before and after a single session of chiropractic care, as well as before and after a control session. They found that the students who received chiropractic care were actually able to produce 16% more force in their leg muscles after the chiropractor had gently checked and adjusted any dysfunctional spinal segments, or what chiropractors call vertebral subluxations. In contrast, the students in the control group that did not get chiropractic spinal adjustments were weaker after the control intervention. This is because their leg muscles were getting tired or fatigued from having to repeatedly contract during the testing session. This is really interesting because both groups of students had to repeatedly contract their leg muscles over and over again. But when the students received chiropractic adjustments, their leg muscles did not fatigue, and instead they were actually able to produce more force. This study shows clearly that spine and nervous system function actually impacts the way your brain is able to produce force, and can prevent your muscles from fatiguing during repeated strong muscle contractions. And it gets even more exciting, because it turns out that the New Zealand-based scientist had used the same methods and techniques as another group who looked at what changed within the brain and central nervous system when people either underwent 3 weeks of endurance training or 3 weeks of strength training. The New Zealand group's results after a single session of chiropractic care was just about identical to what this other group of researchers found in their subjects that had done 3 weeks of strength training. This suggests that your spine's function can have a profound effect on the way your brain can produce strength in your muscles. The same New Zealand group followed up this study in elite taekwondo athletes, and again showed that even in a group of elite, highly trained athletes, a single session of chiropractic care can improve their strength and prevent fatigue. A lot more research needs to be done because we do not yet know how much longer these strength changes last. But these studies highlight that spinal function has a far greater impact on our health and performance than we previously realized. The way your spine works actually changes the way your brain works. An amazing new study was conducted in 2015 in a hospital in Denmark. A group of people who had never had any chiropractic care before attended 2 sessions. One with real chiropractic care and one with sham chiropractic care. During both sessions, whole head brain waves were recorded. The brainwave recordings, or electroencephalography, EEG for short, showed some very clear changes in the way the brain functions after the chiropractic session, and no changes happened after the sham session. The study showed a change in brain function of almost 20% on average after the chiropractic session. This study is really important because it's the 4th time this very same finding has been published in reputable research journals. And this study's data was collected and analysed by non-chiropractic scientists. This means there is no doubt that adjusting your spine changes the way your brain operates. Because the Danish scientists recorded the brain waves, or EEG, over the whole head from 64 individual electrodes, they could also work out exactly where the changes in function were happening after the chiropractic session. They were able to show that the changes were most likely taking place in an area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. This part of your brain is a little bit like the conductor of the brain, making all the other parts of your brain cooperate together in perfect harmony. The prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain where your executive functions take place. This means it's very important for our everyday behavior. It's the part of the brain needed for us to be able to carry out all goal-directed tasks: decision-making, memory and attention, intelligence, processing of pain and emotional responses to it, autonomic function, movement control, eye movements, and spatial awareness. Therefore, demonstrating that chiropractic care changes function of the prefrontal cortex could explain many previous research results that have been documented with chiropractic care, such as improvements in sensorimotor function relevant to falls prevention in the elderly, or better joint position sense in both the upper limb and the lower limb. Also improved muscle strength in several lower limb muscles, better pelvic floor muscle control, and better ability to carry out mental rotations of objects in space. Being able to accurately perceive where you are and where your arms and legs are is very, very important. You need to know where you are to be able to move without having accidents. And it's also very important to be able to accurately perceive the world around you. This is a vital skill we need all day, every day. To recognize some objects, you may need to mentally rotate them. For example, to recognize the letter P versus the letter B, if they are not upright, you would need to mentally rotate them in your mind to figure out which letter it was. We all mentally rotate shapes and objects that we see, but we may not often think about that we do it, or how important it is for our daily life. Chiropractors have long observed a wide variety of changes in people under their care following adjustments. Along the wide spectrum of claims from those who are under care are those who say they feel better or are able to focus better, and those who notice improvements in movement and coordination. This study takes us a little further down the path of understanding why this could be. So have you seen your chiropractor lately? You may want to have your brain's conductor fine-tuned too. After many years of research, we now know beyond a doubt that spinal function impacts and changes brain function. Scientists call these changes that happen in our brains neural plastic changes. Neural plastic changes are happening all the time because our brain is continuously adapting to our ever-changing environment. When your spine is not moving properly, this leads to changes in the way the small muscles closest to your spine and skull send proprioceptive information to your brain. Proprioception means your brain's awareness of the position of your body. So it's your brain's ability to know where all the parts of your body are in space. The proprioceptive information that comes from the muscles closest to your spine and skull help your brain to know what's going on in your spine, which represents the core of your body. For your brain to accurately move your arms and legs, your brain needs to know exactly what's happening in your spine. This ability to move accurately, based on sensing what's going on in your body, is a process known as sensory-motor interaction. Sensory-motor interaction basically means your brain's ability to take all the information it receives from your body and your environment and put it all together to make sense of it, and then to create just the right sort of movements in response to that sensory information. For example, moving your hand to catch a ball that has been thrown to you. But how does this relate to your spine? If we look at spinal function in a very simplistic way, there are really 3 things you want your spine to do on a regular basis. Sometimes, for example, if you're running, you want your spinal bones to move in a synchronistic or harmonious manner to disperse the forces generated from the running. By moving in harmony, the forces are shared equally across your spinal bones so no damage takes place. But other times, for example if you are lifting a heavy object, then you want your spine to stiffen up to protect you. Without all your muscles stiffening up like this, you could injure yourself. So how does your spine sometimes move and sometimes stiffen up? Well, your brain does this for you by activating the muscles around your spine and skull, which are called your paraspinal muscles. Your brain activates the correct muscles, in the correct order, to the correct degree, with perfect timing, to either allow for synchronistic movement, for example during running, or to allow your spine to stiffen up, for example during heavy lifting. In addition to this, your spine muscles also, at times, need to automatically respond during times when you're expecting some sort of postural challenge, such as a trip or a slip. If you are tripping over, you need your brain to automatically, without consciously thinking about it, switch on and off your correct paraspinal muscles very fast to help you maintain your balance and stop yourself from falling over. This automatic activation of your spinal muscles is also important during arm and leg movements to stabilize your body and prevent injuries. So when you have spinal dysfunction, or what chiropractors call a subluxation, your brain is simply not controlling the movement pattern of a part of your spine appropriately. For example, your brain may not be moving your spinal bones in harmony when it should do, or it may not automatically be responding to postural challenges at the right time. So how would you know if you were subluxated? Well, often you don't know because you might not feel any symptoms right away. They may end up causing neural plastic changes in your brain that lead to back or neck pain, but they may not. For some people, they may result in clumsiness because you're not controlling the movements of your body properly. For some people, they may just cause weak muscles, or reduced sports performance, or difficulty reading, or simply the worsening of other conditions such as colic or bedwetting, or perhaps high blood pressure. We simply don't know yet how a subluxation is going to affect you. But we do know when your spine isn't functioning well, if you're subluxated, it does interfere with the way your brain and body communicates, and the way your brain controls what's going on in your body. When a chiropractor adjusts these subluxations and improves the function of your spine, this results in better communication between your brain and your body, which may have an impact on the way you feel if these subluxations were causing symptoms for you. Or it may mean that your brain is better able to control what's happening in your body, so you can perform at your optimal potential. So if you want to have a tune-up of your brain-body communication, go and see your family chiropractor and have your spine tuned up so you can function at your best. You may be wondering if spinal dysfunction really can affect your brain. So let's look at some very interesting research that has explored exactly this. A group of New Zealand-based researchers and another group in Canada have over the past 10 years done many experiments comparing brain function in people with a history of spinal dysfunction and a group with no spinal problems whatsoever. The spinal dysfunction group was called the subclinical pain group because they were not in any kind of pain on the days of the experiments, but they had a history of spinal problems. So subclinical pain refers to people who have recurring spinal dysfunction, such as mild pain, ache, or stiffness, with or without a history of known trauma. There is an increasing interest in subclinical pain in the scientific literature because individuals who fall into this category provide an opportunity to explore how spinal dysfunction affects their brain without the complications of current pain, because pain itself is known to alter brain function. We already know that once you are feeling pain, it changes how your brain functions. But what the research on subclinical pain is showing us is that even just mild recurring spinal problems, even on days you feel no pain, can also alter how your brain functions. Let's take a closer look at some studies that have compared these people with subclinical pain with people who have never ever had any spinal problems at all. Well, this is where it gets interesting. The brains of people with a history of spinal dysfunction are less accurately aware of where their arm is when they close their eyes. You need your brain to know accurately where your arms are all the time to be able to move without having injuries. Another study showed that the brains of people with spinal dysfunction were slower at mentally rotating objects in space compared with a healthy control group. This suggests that your brain's ability to mentally rotate objects is affected by the function of your spine. We need to mentally rotate objects in space all day, every day, but we often don't think about the fact that we do this. Being able to accurately perceive where you are and where your arms and legs are is very, very important. You need to know where you are to be able to move without having accidents. And it's also very important to be able to accurately perceive the world around you. This is a vital skill we need all day, every day. To recognize some objects, you may need to mentally rotate them. For example, to recognize the letter P versus the letter B, if they are not upright, you would need to mentally rotate them in your mind to figure out which letter it was. We all mentally rotate shapes and objects that we see, but we do not often think about that we do it, or how important it is for our daily life. Another study conducted in Canada recorded brainwave responses to mild electrical stimulation at the wrist before and after a 10-minute task where they had to do precise movements of their hands. There were significant differences between the spinal dysfunction group and those who had healthy spines, demonstrating again that the brains of those with mild recurring neck pain, even on days they had no symptoms at all, processed sensory and movement information in a different way compared to people with totally healthy necks. They also found that only the healthy neck group could remember or learn the hand movements, but the neck dysfunction group could not. So even this kind of mild neck dysfunction was changing the way the brains were able to learn movement patterns. In another study, scientists in Canada found that individuals with poorly functioning necks are not as good at processing sensory information from their different sensory organs, like their eyes and ears, compared with people with healthy necks. Being able to accurately process multimodal sensory information becomes very important as we age, as poor multimodal processing is a risk factor for falls in the elderly. This is where chiropractic could help. Chiropractic care has been shown to improve the way older adults process sensory information together from their ears and eyes. A study was conducted in Auckland, New Zealand, with 60 older adults, half of whom received 3 months of chiropractic care, and the other half that did not. Those who received chiropractic care were better able to accurately perceive sound and visual information at the same time after the chiropractic care. Adjusting dysfunctional spinal segments, or what chiropractors call vertebral subluxations, has also been shown to improve the brain's ability to perceive where the arm is in space when subjects close their eyes. This was in the same group mentioned earlier who had a history of spinal dysfunction. Chiropractic neck adjustments have also been shown to lead to faster mental rotation. Another study has shown that adjusting dysfunctional spinal segments in people with subclinical neck pain improves their brain's ability to contract their leg muscles. It actually makes them stronger. So one thing is becoming very clear. The function of your spine impacts the way your brain works. So why not take good care of your spine with a regular checkup with your family chiropractor? Did you know that spinal adjustments can change the way your cerebellum functions? The cerebellum is known as the little brain within your brain. This little structure at the back of your brain is incredibly important. For example, the cerebellum is extremely important for us to be able to perform everyday movements and tasks, such as walking and reading and writing. It is also essential to be able to stay balanced and upright. The cerebellum does not initiate movement, but it contributes to the coordination, the precision, and the accurate timing of your movements. It does this by comparing all the inputs it receives from the sensory systems of the brain and body and integrates and processes these inputs and then fine-tunes your movements so they are perfectly coordinated and timed so you are not clumsy. The cerebellum is not just important for balance and accurate coordinated movements, but it's also important for other cognitive tasks, such as being able to pay attention to a task, or for language, as well as the way we relate to fear and pleasure responses. And we know that the cerebellum is very important for learning new movements and skills. Brain scientists have done several research studies exploring how chiropractic care impacts the function of the brain, and have even looked at specifically cerebellum function. It turns out that proper movement of the spine is in fact very important for the brain, in particular for how it knows where all your body parts are in space. And since the cerebellum is known to influence this in a brain map of the body as well, these brain scientists have specifically tested whether adjusting the spine could impact the way the cerebellum processes information, as well as the way it talks to both the perception and movement centers in the brain. These brain scientists use sophisticated machines to measure brain waves, or electroencephalography, and showed that spinal adjustments do appear to change the way the cerebellum processes sensory information. They have also used machines called transcranial magnetic stimulation to measure how the cerebellum talks to the movement centers in the brain, and showed that spinal adjustments changes this as well. They did not stop here and also measured the way the brain controls overarm throwing movements, because it's well known that the cerebellum is very important for controlling such movements. Throwing is a skill which is highly dependent on intact cerebellar function. People with damaged cerebellums fail to release the ball when they are throwing at an optimal time in overarm throwing, leading to slower ball speeds and resulting in slower elbow extension velocities and accelerations. There is also an absence of elbow extension deacceleration at the end of the throw and slower wrist flexion velocities. What these researchers found was that spinal function also influenced the way people perform arm throwing movements. This series of research studies, along with lots of other studies, show us that even if you are not in pain, if your spine is not working well, this can impact the way your brain, including your cerebellum, perceives how you are sitting or standing and where your arms and legs are and how they move. Your spinal function can impact how coordinated you are and how well and how accurately you move your body. This can impact you all day, every day. Even taking a simple step involves your brain and cerebellum perceiving the terrain, planning the movements needed, to sense how you move, and to sense where you want to put your foot down, and to coordinate this entire process with pinpoint perfection. Another cool study conducted in Auckland, New Zealand, has shown that a period of chiropractic care, even in older adults, was able to improve these people's brain's ability to sense where their foot was and to help them process visual and sound information at the same time, faster and more accurately, and to be able to take a faster step if they wanted to. All this research shows us that your spinal function is very important for your ability to learn new movements, and that chiropractic adjustments can help improve learning new movements. So are you trying to learn a new musical instrument or a sport? Are you struggling with reading and writing? Do you find that you are clumsy? Do you trip over your own feet or knock your elbows on door frames? Or do you stub your toe often? Maybe you need to go and see your family chiropractor. It may be time to have your brain's coordination, learning and balance systems fine-tuned too. Did you know that even the ancient Greeks knew that movement and physical exercise was good for your brain? Modern scientists have now shown that movement is one of the keys to promoting a healthy brain. Movement has been shown to help people with dementia, depression, and even ADHD. It's even been shown to change the structure of your brain and improve your concentration and how fast you can think and react. Scientists now also know that it's not just physical exercise that's important for your brain, but how your spine moves is also very important for keeping your brain healthy. In fact, one Nobel Prize-winning brain scientist said that 90% of the stimulation and nutrition to the brain is generated by the movement of the spine. One potential reason why a healthy spine is so important for your brain is that researchers believe that when one of your spinal segments isn't moving properly, it changes the way your brain perceives and responds to all other sensory information that enters your nervous system. In other words, spinal function seems to be the one factor that your brain uses to help process and integrate all of the information from your environment. This is why chiropractors are so interested in making sure that your spine is functioning properly. They believe that if your spine isn't moving in a normal or ideal way, it changes the way your brain controls your body. New research has recently shown that chiropractors are very good at figuring out which segments in your spine are the most restricted or stiff. They can then adjust your spine using specific spinal adjustments to help restore normal movement patterns in your spine with the aim of helping your brain to better control your body. Scientists have shown that chiropractic adjustments can have a big effect on how well your spine moves. And they've also shown that chiropractic adjustments can help your brain to process information more quickly, know better where your body is in space, and control the way your muscles work more efficiently. So if you want to make sure your brain is getting the stimulation it needs to stay healthy, see your chiropractor so they can help you to keep your spine moving as best as it can. And in between your chiropractic adjustments, keep your spine moving well by staying active or doing yoga and other stretching exercises. Remember that if you look after your spine, your brain will love you for it. Your spine influences your prefrontal cortex. Did you know that when a chiropractor adjusts your spine, it changes the way a part of your brain, called the prefrontal cortex, functions? This is interesting because your prefrontal cortex is a vital part of your brain that makes you who you are. This suggests that the way your spine moves influences who you are. Your prefrontal cortex is actually responsible for many important brain functions. It is the part of your brain that is responsible for your executive functions. It plays a key role in how you feel pain. It is vital for your emotional control and mental health. And it's critically involved in how you control your body chemistry, how you fight off germs and bugs through your immune system, and how you regulate the way your heart beats, how you breathe, and how you digest that meal you ate for breakfast. Some of you are probably wondering what I meant when I said the prefrontal cortex is responsible for your executive functions. Let me explain a little more. Our so-called executive functions include things like planning and completing tasks and goals. It includes decision-making, memory, problem-solving, and controlling our behavior. Not surprisingly, since your prefrontal cortex controls these functions, it's said to be the seat of our intelligence. The prefrontal cortex also plays a key role in pain processing, or the feeling of pain itself in the brain. Studies have shown that your prefrontal cortex is activated when you have new pain, and it can also put the brakes on other parts of your brain to limit how much pain you feel. The prefrontal cortex is also thought to be involved in how pain becomes ongoing and chronic. Considering chiropractic care has been shown to change how the prefrontal cortex works, it may help explain why so many clinical trials have shown that chiropractic care helps people with neck pain, back pain, and certain types of headaches. Chiropractic adjustments are likely changing our feelings of pain by changing how the prefrontal cortex is working. The prefrontal cortex is also really important for emotional control and our mental health. So it's vitally involved in how you feel and how you interact with others. And your spine can impact this. In addition to this, it's also well known that the prefrontal cortex regulates your autonomic nervous system, which is the part of your nervous system that unconsciously controls many of your bodily functions, like your heart rate and your digestion. It regulates your endocrine system, which is really important for controlling your body chemistry and your hormones. And the prefrontal cortex is vital for proper immune system function. And we all know how important your immune system is. So yes, you heard me correctly. The prefrontal cortex controls your emotions, your mental health, it balances the autonomic nervous system, influences your body chemistry, and impacts your immune system. But did you know that this super important part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, is the most vulnerable part of your brain to the negative impacts of stress? We know from research studies that negative emotional stress stops your prefrontal cortex from operating properly. And this has an impact on all of your prefrontal cortex functions. It's why stress makes it so hard to think clearly and rationally. By shutting down your normal prefrontal cortex functions, stress also has a negative impact on your emotional state and your mental health too. And stress shuts down the prefrontal cortex's natural control over your autonomic nervous system, your endocrine system, and even your immune system, which can result in chronically high levels of inflammation in your body. The scary thing is that we also know that excessive levels of inflammation have been linked to a whole host of problems like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and all sorts of other problems in the body. So you need your prefrontal cortex to function properly. You need it to function at its best so you can adapt and respond to what is happening around you in an ideal way. And now we know that the way your spine moves influences how this remarkable part of your brain works. This may help explain why so many people who receive chiropractic care report they feel better, they feel less stressed, they sleep better, and even why some report they have better relationships with others when they're under chiropractic care. So if you're feeling stressed, why not go and see your family chiropractor to give your prefrontal cortex a boost?